Again, welcome to Focus on Liberia. We are broadcasting from Atlanta, Georgia. We're going to be discussing the history and the culture of the Loma ethnic group. To discuss this, we have on the phone from Toledo, Ohio, Dr. Sakui Malakpa. Dr. Malakpa, welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. And Dr. Malakpa is originally from Liberia, West Africa. He graduated from Florida State University cum laude. He also earned a master's degree from Florida State University, that's FSU, with a 4.0 GPA. He matriculated to Harvard University, from where he earned his second master's degree and a doctorate. He then moved to the University of Toledo as a professor, and now he's a full professor with tenure. Also, while working at the University of Toledo, Dr. Malakpa returned to school and earned a law degree. From his teenage years, Dr. Malakpa wrote short stories in English and Loma, which is his language. He still writes short stories. In addition, he has published journal articles alongside a novel and one academic work. He recently published the biography of His Excellency Joseph Newman Boakai, that's the former Vice President of Liberia. Dr. Malakpa himself is from the Loma ethnic group, and we are glad to have him to discuss the history and culture of the Loma ethnic group. Dr. Malakpa, take it away from here, please.
Yes, the history of the Loma people is very compound complex, like you would think of any other ethnic group. First of all, let me say that the Lomas occupy two countries. There are 5 clans in Liberia. That's Ubame, Bonde, Buliyama, Ziema, and Gizima. The names may not mean anything to many people. And then 2 in Guinea, Wima and Lulema in Guinea. And those clans could be subdivided into smaller areas, smaller clans, smaller divisions. And so when you move from one part of Loma land to another, you'll notice dialectical differences. Many people usually mistake the word dialect with the word language. Loma, Peleg, Bandi, Kisi, Kru, those are not dialects. Those are languages. But within each language, you have different dialects. So a dialect is a regional variation of the same language. So we have different dialects within the Loma language. Where did the Lomas come from? The history of the Loma people comes from 2 sources. The historical source and a legend about the origin of the Loma people. We give tremendous credit to the late Paul Degain Corva, who wrote a book entitled The History of the Loma People in 1995. The book was published. And Mr. Kovar really delved into how the Loma people came into being. The history of the Loma people is linked to the history of West Africa, as one would imagine. No surprises there. In the Liberian circles, it is often said that the ethnic groups of Liberia migrated from the Western Sudan. Well, that is true. But what people don't usually start to think is that the Western Sudan was a very vast area, from the vast savanna region between the Sahara and the tropical forest in the south, known as the Guinea coastal region. That's what comprised the Western region, the Western Sudan. And within that Western Sudan, there sprang a number of kingdoms. People know of the great kingdoms of Ghana, Mali, and Songhai. And among those three kingdoms, the one that had a big impact on what is now Liberia and most of West Africa actually was the Mali Empire. And the Mali Empire had quite a number of sub-kingdoms. And one of those kingdoms was the Mende Kingdom. The empire itself began to decline around the 15th century. And among them was the Mende Kingdom. And there was a rivalry within that kingdom among the princes of the kingdom as to who was the legitimate leader. In addition to that rivalry, there was a drought, which forced one of the princes, named Fali Kama, to migrate south. When he migrated south, he ended up in Musadu, which is still in the Republic of Guinea, where he settled. He was a warrior, he was a farmer, and he became very prosperous. As a warrior, he conquered many of the areas around him, including the Kisi land. And I must digress a little bit to say that among the ethnic groups of Liberia, the oldest existing ones in the country are the Kisis and the Golas. And so by the time of Fali Kama settled in Musadu in Guinea, the Kisis were already in what is now in Lofa County. So he conquered that area, Fali Kama did, and took slaves with him back to Guinea, to Musadu. Among the slaves was a young, beautiful Kisi lady named Kumba. And he took Kumba as a wife and fathered, well, some say 3 children, some say 2, but we know of one particularly who was given the Kisi name Fala, after the Kisi tradition, Fala Wubo. Fala Wubo eventually became the founder of the Loma ethnic group. He himself was a warrior, a blacksmith, and a hunter. And one day while hunting, he climbed a mountain and he looked at the area now known as Lofa County. It was just a beautiful, and he said, Kanuko Kwe. Kanuko Kwe in Loma means hallelujah. That's the land I want. So well, it's a long story, but eventually he prepared to conquer the inhabitants of the area. And in preparation for that war, he was told that since he was from his maternal ancestry was among the Kisis, who at the time practiced the Pearl Society, which is a bush initiating school for boys, he had to be initiated. He agreed, and he was initiated, and his initiated name, when people get initiated, they take on an initiated name. His initiated name was Loma Mo, which means fully initiated. And that's how the Loma name came about. to make a long story short, he eventually conquered what is now part of Lofa County, and his name Wubo is still one of the clans in Loma land called Wubome, which means the land of Wubo. And from there, we, like I said, we have five other clans, four other clans, five altogether in Liberia and two in Guinea. That's the historical account as to how the Loma ethnic group came into being. The legend also, interestingly, goes back to Musadu in Guinea. There, our ancestors told stories that there in Guinea, in Musadu, 7 children of Yama. Yama is a very familiar, famous name in among the fellas, the Lomas, and to a lesser extent the Bandits. 7 children of Yama descended the earth from Gizuve. Gizuve means up in the sky. It's almost like an Adam and Eve's kind of story.
Right.
I'm not saying that's a legend, but so when these 7 children descended the earth on a chain, they landed in a wheat farm on a hill near Misadu. And they went to an old man who lodged them, who was very generous, and like there's good generosity again, because I said earlier that Fali Kama was very generous. So to this day, there's a saying in Loma that that it was generosity, not the size of Musadu, that made the town big and famous. Because from both the historical perspective and the legend perspective, there's the essence of generosity. So these 7 children stayed in Misadu until their eldest brother, whom they called their father, died, and they decided to go and find adequate materials, cows and whatever they needed to have a fitting burial feast for their leader. Well, they never went back. Instead, they went south and settled in various parts of what is today Loma land. Therefore, to this day, if any Loma person does something heroic, generous, kind, and wonderful, they will say, Toga Yamalu Bobo. He's a true Yama child. So to be worthy of praise, you must prove that you are a true descendant of the Yama children. And therefore, we have these 2 historical, 2 accounts, one a legend and the other historical. But interestingly enough, they both point to Misadu in Guinea.
Wow. So Loma, the name Loma, according to what I read, came later. So before that time, and also, so what was that called before the name Loma? I believe it was in around the 1800 before they started referring to the ethnic group as Loma.
But like I say, from the time Falawubo got initiated, the ethnic group just didn't spring up. It took quite a while for it to have what we call several houses, Samala and Jamala and various other houses that sprang up. So it took a while. In fact, when Falawubo was dying, he said, he had conquered everything except old age. And so he told his children he had always wanted to live in a mountain, Musabagizi, which means the 3-headed mountain. That's where he wanted to build his house, he wanted to live there. But since he was not able to build his house there, when he died, that's where his spirit would be living. And as a result, when they wanted to worship him, they made sacrifices to that mountain. The mountain is still there. You can see it from the middle of Wanjama. It looks like a 3-headed mountain, but you will have to look carefully to notice that. So yeah, the name just didn't spring up, and then an official recognition of the name by the Liberian government took quite a while, and then later on it got the name was given to the Buza name was given to the Loma people, which is a derogatory name from one of their leaders And from this leader, the followers became Buzes, but the Lomas themselves do not ever refer themselves as Buze people. They are known as Loma people. The Queles call them Tuan, the Mandingos, and the others from Guinea call them Toma, but they themselves refer to themselves as Loma people, and they speak Loma Gui, which means the Loma language.
Okay. So Buse, where does that name come from? You say from one of their leaders. Some say that was...
there was a leader named Buse. Buse it's a mispronunciation of Buse. The Buse is, there's no sound in English called B, so the B became B. So instead of Buse, Buse means naked without clothes on. And that's not an unfamiliar, unknown name in Loma country, but it's really, really rare. So there was a leader named Buse, and which the English speakers couldn't pronounce, so it became Buze, and from his followers, the name Buze was given to everybody. But that's not a name that Loma people cherish. They are known as Loma people.
Right.
The person will say Gaga Loma Nu. I'm a Loma person.
Or Loma Giti. Loma people.
Loma Giti, that's plural.
Oh, okay. All right. Now, where do the Loma people live? I understand they are in the Guinea, also in the Masanta area.
Yeah, like I said, there are 5 clans in Liberia, and 2 in Guinea. And that's a little bit misleading because the 5 clans in Liberia, 3 of them extend into Guinea. So, for example, I'm from Ziema. My hometown is Wozi, and Wozi is in Ziema. Ziema is not only in Liberia; there are Ziema towns in Guinea. So we are divided by colonial territorial boundaries, but we are not bounded by those boundaries as a people. Those territorial boundaries do not separate us as Loma people. So you can find Bluyama people Gizima people in Guinea. For example, Koyama is a Gizima town. Okay, that's a Gizima town. And Bawu and Makabu, those are Gizima towns in Guinea. And my clan is Ziema, and there are Ziema towns in Guinea. Dopame, those are Ziema towns in Guinea. So, but by virtue of the fact that they are in Guinea does not stop them from being Ziema.
Right. So what's the relationship in terms of culture and language?
They are very, very much the same, except the dialect differences. So if you go from Liberia into Guinea, you'll notice a very different accent. One of the clans in Guinea called Loma, literally means rotten on it. The accent is so different that even I, as a Loma person, I have to listen so carefully. It almost seems as if they're speaking a different language. So there can be the difference can be minor, and the difference can be very vast, and sometimes very funny, and sometimes not so funny. I'll give you one very quick example. My first name is Sakui. Now, in the part of Loma land from which I come, Gizima, Ziema, Bluyama, which you might call Lower Lofa County, around the Zaza area, Sakui means turtle. But if you go to Vanjama and say Sakui, you're saying a very bad word. You're referring to a female body part.
Oh wow!
So it's not a small difference.
No, very vast. So
very
within Liberia, those clans are they? Is the language different also, or there are little variations? I know, like
there are variations. There are variations there. Even within clans, there are language dialect differences, variations. Some very minor, some not so minor. So that's just the name of the game with any language, be it English, French, or whatever. you will always find very vast differences among languages, like geographic regions, whether it's pronunciation or whether it's a meaning of different things meaning different things. One thing meaning having different meanings in different regions, you will always have that within the different geographic regions of spoken language.
If you are just joining us, this is Focus on Liberia. We are discussing today the history and culture of the Loma ethnic group. Our guest is Dr. Sakui Malakpa. He's on the phone from Toledo, Ohio. Dr. Malapa, I see that during my reading, you see that Loma, or the ethnic group, is uniquely situated among the three major ethnic groups in Liberia. That's the Mel, the Mende, and the Kwa. So you see that the Bele forming part of the Kwa is both Loma people, the Mel and the Mende. What advantage does that give the Loma people, or what do you get? How different or how unique is the Loma people based on the fact that they interact, probably the only ethnic group that interact with all three major groups in Liberia?
I think the advantage is knowing the different ethnic groups, and the proximity is also an advantage. For example, the Peles and the Lomas are just like because of, like, just going back to the history briefly, because of the fact that the mother of the Lomas, Kumba, was from the Kisis are regarded as our uncles and aunts. And that is not a relationship to take lightly. Believe you me, wherever a Loma man sees a Kisi man, that's his uncle. Or a Kisi woman, that's his aunt. Or her aunt, whether it's a Loma woman or not. So the Peles, on the other hand, to return to your question, are our uncles and aunts as well. But that is built on legend, and I've written an article about that. So that close proximity means that we get to speak some of these languages, and they get to speak Loma. It was very interesting once I was in Liberia, and I went to a case that was being investigated among a Loma man and a Pele woman. And I was just intrigued. I hadn't even thought about this, because the Pele woman could explain her side of the story in Pele, and the Loma man explain his side of the story in Loma. And there's no translation. I mean, it was just as if this was natural. Everybody was understanding what was going on. I mean, most people there, I imagine, at least I did. So that's an advantage, that you can move from one part of the geographic region to another and settle in. And the people who do that best are the Bele people. They are incredibly good with languages. I mean, if they come and see you speaking Pele, they will speak Pele as if they are Pele. If they see you speaking Loma, they will speak Loma as if they are Loma, with no accent. Believe me, they're very good with languages.
Right. And pretty soon we're going to have on the Bele, or the Kua, as they call themselves.
Yes.
To discuss that. Let's talk about, you already mentioned the Poro. Let's talk about education in the among the Loma people, especially in before Western education.
Well, before Western education, the education. No. First of all, as a professor of education, I must say, education is usually defined very narrowly to mean literacy or numeracy. That's a very small aspect of education. Education, from my perspective at least, is from an existentialist and humanistic perspectives, education is not just numeracy, it's not just literacy. It is a process of self-development.
Right.
It's a process by which one is enabled to care for self. That's education.
Okay.
And so, how do the young in Loma land before Western education were enabled to care for themselves, to understand the history of the land, to
Right.
know familiar relationships, to know trade, art, music, and these kinds of things. Well, every ethnic group has its way of educating its young, bringing up its young, and the Lomas are no exception. This was done through various processes. One main one was and it still exists, the Bush School, the Pora for the boys, and the Sandy for the girls. Many years ago, each one of those used to be 7 years. And then it broke down to 4 years for the boys and 3 years for the girls. And now then it came down to 1 year each, and now it's less than a year because of the pressure for Western education and things like that. But it's an essential part of Loma culture, and as it is with the neighboring ethnic groups. There are also esoteric societies through which there's not only a process of education, but there's also the essence of governance.
Right.
That exert power in such a way that nobody is above the law, no matter who it is. Then there are special training programs. Whether this means that you go in as an apprentice and live with a master. For example, if I want to be a blacksmith, I have lived with a famous blacksmith and learned to be a blacksmith. There's storytelling, my favorite.
Right.
Where,
Mine too.
exactly. So where there are elders who would tell stories, and each of those stories is going to have a meaning. It's going to challenge you to think. It's going to challenge you to speak properly. It's very, very important. And I still write short stories because I benefited from those stories a lot. And my children here, when they were little, I would tell them I would set them down and tell them short stories. And it was very interesting. We went to visit some relatives out in the Northeast, and my children said, "Our dad tells the best stories. You guys have to hear him. You got to hear some of these stories. Some of them are so funny." And they didn't want to do that. Finally, said, okay, we'll listen. So all the children sat down, about maybe 10 of them. So I stood in the middle to tell some of the stories, and the other kids were just bored. When is this going to be over so we can turn the TV on? They didn't want to listen to that. They don't want to be challenged. They just want to be entertained, and that's the TV curriculum. It holds your attention and keeps your attention. That's its purpose. So it was incredible that from growing up in Woolsey, we learned a lot of stories through storytelling. You also learn a lot through ceremonies, where the elders actually make you to watch and learn. For example, a wedding. What are the process of a wedding? How do Loma people get married? Well, if you're a kid, how are you going to know? Unless you watch.
Yeah.
So the elders would say, no, don't go. Sit down here. No, sit down. What they're saying is, you need to learn this. You see? And there's another big one is visiting the elderly. We have a famous saying that he who does not visit the elderly, if you go somewhere, what are you going to say? How are you going to know? How are you going to know the history of the land? How are you going to know where your ancestors came from before they arrived in this town where we live now? So you got to befriend the elderly. And this is where age in our culture, and this is not only true of Loma culture, but almost every Liberian ethnic group that I know of, where age is cherished, is revered.
Yeah.
Because it seems as if the older you get, the wiser you become. Whereas in most Western cultures, it's the opposite. The older you get, it seems that more senile you become, and that's a huge difference. So in terms of educating the young, acculturating the young, socializing the young, there were different avenues of education where the young were brought up properly and accurately, whether it's through a governance system, is through different ethnic groups, societies, individuals. And the other big advantage, and again, this is true of other ethnic groups, is that if you were a little kid, you were not only taught the right thing by your parents. Any elderly person in the town could discipline you to tell you don't do that. I know. Yes, I know. When I was growing up, for example, I could say something to a boy and nobody really pay attention to it. But if I said that same thing to a girl, I'm going to get a spanking.
Yeah.
You see? No, you don't say that to a girl. No, you don't say that to a lady. So you learn those things. So that kind of discipline comes in not only if your parents are present, but any other elderly, older person can do that, can exert that discipline. So these are different avenues of learning.
You mentioned two things, governance and then marriage. Let's talk about first governance among the Loma people.
The Lomas don't have kings. They have Masagi, which is the chief.
Okay.
The chief is appointed by the elders based on his demonstrated ability, knowledge of the land, respect for others, knowledge of culture, etc., etc. But the chief is an administrative head in most Loma towns and villages. There are other forces, the esoteric groups, the Pora and Sandy, for example, do have a means of control. They have other groups that comprise both Loma, women and men, where disputes are settled. Disputes that may not be able to be handled by the chief, or dispute between two villages, two towns. So there's a hierarchy of administrative offices, if you want to call them that make sure there is control and respect for the rule of law within the town. Some are overt. For example, like I say, the chief of the town, and each section of the town will have its own leader. Then each of the Pora Society and Sunday Society will have their own leaders. And each of other groups, such as the young men, we have a leader. The young women, we have a leader. So things go through like a hierarchy, a social ladder to the top. And therefore, there really is no case that cannot be handled by the town. And the ultimate decision comes when it has to go to the esoteric groups, especially those comprised of both men and women, where final decisions are rendered and they are not appealable.
So Loma have these Mazagi, or the chiefs. When the government of Liberia came in, then they appointed a paramount chief, meaning the chief of those chiefs.
Yeah,
how did that go?
What they did was they said that I think X amount of towns, I think 20 towns should comprise a clan. And then the clan will have a clan chief, and then 2 or 3 clans together will have a paramount chief. Well, the thing is, when the people said that this was law, there's not much the Loma people themselves could do about this, because these came down from Monrovia. The one thing, though, that the laws from Monrovia did that was good was that they said that these chiefs could govern using customary law, not necessarily. They didn't say that customary laws were outlawed. Instead, they were upheld. For example, marriage through customary law, a traditional marriage, is as legal in Liberia as if you go to court and get married, or if you go to church and get married.
Right.
So, customary law was upheld as well as statutory law.
Right, and I was about to ask that to what extent did the intervention from the central government enhance or disrupt the governance structure of the Loma people?
There was some disruption, in my personal view. There was some disruption, but not extensive. The disruption came in from the establishment of paramount and clan chiefs. Actually, in my personal view, strengthened the governance system. Mm-hmm. But when they bring in district commissioners, especially those who were ruthless rulers, when you bring in things like you need to pay the hot tax, when people who can work all year round, they cannot earn $1, and at the end of the year they need to pay $2 for their hut, and God forbid they have two huts, that's $4. And I personally saw people persecuted because they could not afford the hot tax as a little kid. In fact, I'm in the process of writing this a little article about what the chiefs have just said in Liberia in reintroducing the hot tax. I've read a couple of articles on it, and I was wondering whether I could throw my voice to that, because it as a child I saw it. It was brutal.
Yeah, I heard those stories.
Brutal.
Let's shift to the marriage. I have some young people here who wants to know how the Loma people get married traditionally.
I have just I have a book coming out in Liberia, hopefully in July, called Kolu and Sizi. It's a love story, and it discusses Loma traditional marriage a little bit. But there are 2 or 3 steps to the marriage system. One is where you have a young man sees a young, beautiful lady that he likes, and he approaches her. Usually he doesn't, in true Loma marriage, he doesn't approach her. He asks an elderly relative, an elderly aunt or an elderly sister, and says, "Look, I like that girl. Could you ask her to be my girlfriend?" So the elderly lady goes to the young lady and say, "Lady, I've got somebody who's interested in you." And the first thing is, no, I'm not interested. No. And she talks to her until she finally agrees. Then when she agrees, he has to present a kiye. Kiye is a token of appreciation, usually a hair tie. The hair tie is a big like a big handkerchief that women tie around their heads.
Yeah.
So if she accepts that, that means she has formally accepted the proposal. Now they start to date, and they could stay in that relationship for the rest of their lives. But the problem with that is that's not respectable. It's not respected because there's no formality to it.
Yeah.
So if you have children in that relationship, the children don't belong to their dad. Belong is a strong word here, but they're not really subject to the rules of their dad. They belong to their uncles. The man doesn't want that. So the next step is Sisabazi. Sisabazi is set in the mat. That's what it literally means. So you're a young man, and you're not prepared for a full marriage because you really can afford right now. To be married, it's good to have your own house. You don't want to get married and be living in your father's house. So while you're living in your father's house, you say, you ask your parents, why don't we ask the girl's parents to set her in a mat. So then you go to your parent figures go to the girl's home and say, we have an interest in this household, and we want to have this girl set in the mat. Set in the mat is a form of a marriage, but it's a mini form of marriage. Okay. It only means that the girl's parents, the lady's parents, now formally know and I hear that this man is the only friend our daughter has, and right. He is fully responsible for her, she for him, and you can stay in that relationship again for life. But again, it's still not marriage. It's only a matter of protection for the man and the woman. So to get married, you really have to go and say, we want to get married. And to do that, the parent figure will go to the home again of the lady and said, we want to get married. And it's a elaborate ceremony, but just in a few words, what really happens at the marriage is that the bride and the groom barely participate in the process, especially the groom, because he and his friends are sitting on the side, basically. It is the father figure, his father figure, not necessarily his biological father, but his father figure will propose, and then at the ceremony, then they will bring a parade of girls. It is so interesting. The girls' sisters, the bride's sisters, they will tie their faces and march them down and say, "Okay, is this the girl you want?" And they said, "No." But each of those girls is a ceremonial thing. It's a fun thing, and finally they bring the real bride, and they say, "Yeah, that's what we want." And then the father figures will set her on the mat, and then they'll give her a bundle of kola nuts and tell her to untie it. And when she's untying it, she stops sometimes. She says, I can't find the rope. More money pours in, more singing, more dancing. And finally, she unties it, and they ask her, do you really want this man? Yes, I do. They say, okay, take one of the kola nuts. And she takes one of the kola nuts. She eats it. And then the father figure says, I want that kola nut back in its original form. And she says, I can't do that. I already ate it. She ate and drank a cup of water and all. I can't do that. I already ate it. What I was eating cannot be produced in its original form. He said, okay, man, the decision you have made must stand.
You can go back.
You can't go back. So, and they say, so go into the home and add to the home. We pray that you be productive, be kind, be generous. But after you've done all of that, if they maltreat you, come back. You've not burnt your home. You still have a home. And after that, the father figure then puts an iron money on her head, prays over her, and then presents her to the family of the bride of the groom. And the mother figure from the mother's side dances over to accept her new daughter-in-law. And that's the end of the marriage. That's really, really in brief what I just told you. But that's basically what it is like.
Yeah, all right. And that's good. And like many other ethnic groups in Liberia, the men can take on other wives. And what's about divorce? What are the grounds for divorce in?
Even if they're just dating, the man cannot take on another girlfriend in a true, respectable sense, let alone a wife, unless she approves. If you're a young lady and a young man comes to you and you know he has a girlfriend or he has a wife and he says, I want you, the first thing she would say, now this is not being practiced anymore, very little of it now because everybody is so Western now. But in the traditional sense, the first thing she would say is, I cannot take your word for it. I need to know what your wife thinks. I need to see your wife, not you. So for him to take on another wife, she has to approve. That's the one thing people don't understand about a polygynous family. And polygyny is taking on more than one wife. Polygamy is taking on more than one spouse. And polyandry is taking on more than one husband. Believe me, those things exist. So when people talk about a polygynous family, they just think that a man can do anything. If we're so, why is it that there are people in the polygynous communities who only have one wife? Many. Because their wife has resisted him taking another woman. No way. Divorce, it's not a simple thing. Divorce has, again, that's another influence of the West that was not so great, because even if you get married through the traditional means, to get divorced, you have to go to court and pay back the dowry that was paid by your parents. And that process can take quite a while. What if the man wants to divorce her? Now she wants to divorce him. Usually the man doesn't tell her, I want to divorce you. He takes her back to her father's house and says, I want you to advise your daughter for a while. That's basically saying, I'm getting rid of her.
All right. Let's bring on in some of our viewers on Facebook. This one is from Hawa Mezga. Hawa is saying, I have always been intrigued by the mechanism of the Loma tribe. The men consider warriors and the woman being breadwinner. Is there any way the professor can explain further?
You know, that's a misconception that the women are only breadwinners. No, the women in a true Loma culture play a far greater role than just breadwinning. They are advisors, and there are instances where they are fighters. But they are not people who are going to exhibit these things like men. Openly. Not openly. We have a parable that says, which means the ladies might advise you in the home, back in the house, in the room. You don't have the wisdom as a man. You mess up somewhere. There's a case going on, and the women are watching this. Say, what's wrong with this man? What's wrong with that? You know what? Come here. You go in and they advise you, and then when you go back outside, you say, ladies and gentlemen, my fathers say. It wasn't fathers who said. It was the ladies who said. You're not giving them credit. You see? So women are advisors, and they play a very powerful role. I think I mentioned earlier that there are esoteric societies that are comprised of men and women. And in that society, women play a very powerful role. But they are not people who are open to these things. They're very subtle and yet very powerful.
Yeah.
In fact, we have another parable that says there are only two things to fear in this world: women and the law.
Yeah. All right. There's another comment here from Mrs. Afrida Kamara. It says, sorry, I joined in late. Is Loma being used as a hypothetical or as a result of research? I'm not getting the question clearly, Afrida, but we are discussing the history and culture of the Loma ethnic group, the actual Loma ethnic group that is in Lofa County. We have another comment here, a question from Dr. Sam Ngovo. He said, among the Bandi, your uncle is your mother's brother and your auntie is your father's sister. Your mother's sister is your mother and your father's brother is your father. Do the Loma have the same kind of relationship?
There is no difference between the Bandi culture and the Loma culture. No difference. The Bandis are Loma people. who just happen to have split up. Bandi, the Loma people who happen to be one of those who one would have otherwise considered as a different dialect, but it's so far away, I would say, from Loma that it cannot be considered a dialect. It's a language by itself. But there's no difference between Bandi culture and Loma culture. They are the same. In fact, most Bandi people speak very good Loma. Yes, that's the Loma culture. Your father's brother is not your uncle. That's your father. Your mother's sister is not your aunt. That's your mother. So the only uncle we have is your mother's brother, and the only uncle we have is your sister, your mother's. The only aunt we have is your mother's brother, and the only aunt we have, the only uncle we have is your mother's brother, and the only aunt we have is your father's sister. So if you have a father who has 5 brothers, all those brothers are your fathers. And all their children are your brothers and sisters. If you have a mother who has 6 sisters, all those sisters are your mothers, and their brothers, their children are your brothers and sisters. And we don't take that lightly. I said earlier that the Loma people regard the Kisis as their uncles and aunts. So do the Bandi people, because they are basically the same group as the Lomas.
There's a Loma girl here, Kumasa. Kumasa is asking or is saying the Loma woman never asks a man for money. You're coming.
No, that's not true. That's such a gross generalization.
Okay.
Especially when you use a strong word like never. That's not true. And even in the traditional sense, they have a way of, even in the Western sense, people have a saying to say a smart woman can make a man do anything she wants. It just depends on how you go about it, and same thing with a smart man can get a woman to do whatever he wants. It just depends on how you go about it. The Loma women in general, and I'm using this as another generalization, are not people who pest the men for money. That is true. But there comes a time when you don't have much of a choice. You have to ask your partner. After all, what is partnership about?
Exactly.
It's about sharing. And if he has something, he will share with you if he asks. Or sometimes you don't need to ask. He sees and knows that my wife or my girlfriend is in need of something, he will share. But to say that never is a very strong generalization.
Somewhere I read that a Loma, you can marry your mother's, family or your mother's brother children.
Yes, your mother's brother is your uncle.
Okay.
So your uncle's children, especially first generation. Let's say my mother's children, and even my sister's children are traditionally regarded as my wives. But those are not wives to quote unquote court or marry, unless it is second generation. Do you understand? So my children can marry, second generation, yes, but not me. Although they carry the name as wives, and they refer to me as husband. So my nieces, in other words, would be my wives, but they're not wives to marry.
Let's go to the language, the Loma language. There's a question here from Dave Jai. He said, let's assume Liberia has decided to use the Loma language as a national language. What are the advantages and disadvantages? How do we deal with variation and create some standardization of the language?
First of all, it will be tough to have the Loma as a national language because it is not the largest ethnic group. Pele is. Pele is the largest ethnic group in Liberia. But Loma has been written into print and into script. There's an ancient Loma script that has been researched for years. And then in my own hometown of Woolsey, back in the early 1940s, there was a missionary named Wesley Sadler. He and his wife settled in Woolsey and wrote the Loma language into print. And I learned to read and write Loma before I went to school, so I had an advantage there. So the language is already in print, and it takes into variation that you can easily print even the different dialect variations, as well as Bandi. You use the same Loma scripts you use to write Bandi. So the advantage is that it's already in print, and that it can accommodate the variations. But it would be difficult to nationalize it in the sense that it's not the largest ethnic group. It's relatively, it's one of the large groups, but not the largest.
Right. And what's about the language itself, the ease at learning it? Would that be an advantage or not?
It would be an advantage. You know, the language itself, based on the Latin script that Reverend Sadler drafted, has 28 letters in the alphabet, and Loma, like several of the languages in Liberia, is a tonal language. So the way you voice is very crucial. But there are only 3 very distinct tones that one would worry about in terms of the language. And of course, you can make a devastating error if you don't use the right tune. For example, they. I don't know if you notice the difference. They is his or her mother.
Right.
They is my mother. So you use exactly the same words, but the way you raise or drop your voice makes a huge difference. And I can tell a lot of jokes about missionaries who were learning Loma in Woolsey, my hometown, who made some horrible, devastating errors. Not intentional, of course, but
right.
Otherwise it wouldn't be errors. But so the tune is just different. One word that you pronounce slightly in your nose, nasally, and then raising and dropping of your voice. That's it. And also the fact that no Loma word ends in a consonant. No Loma word ends in a consonant. All Loma words end in vowels. Maybe 2 vowels, maybe 3 vowels, but never in a syllable, in a consonant. And you see, Eastern Europeans, Indians, and Arabs and other people, because of their languages, they may have difficulty with English. The same thing happened with Liberian ethnic groups, the Peles, the Manos, the Gios, the different groups may have difficulty pronouncing because of the shape of their language, and people don't understand that. So, for example, in Loma, it says no word ends in a consonant. If you tell the Loma, the typical Loma, to say stop, that violates two rules in Loma. There are very few instances where you have 2 consonants come together. Now you have ST in stop, and then the word ends in P. The Loma man cannot say that. He will say setape. Somehow consciously he flips a vowel between the S and the T, and then puts a vowel at the end of the P. He says setape. Well, does the Loma man stop to intellectualize? I'm telling you, no, he does not. But naturally, that's how his language is framed.
Exactly. That's interesting.
Yes. Or he would drop the P altogether. He says star. He drops the P altogether. Star. You see? So there are many languages around the world like that. Yeah. Some Indians that cannot pronounce a W. They would say very, very good. You see? Yeah, and so you have, that's just how languages are phrased. In Eastern Europe, there are many words that they don't use many vowels. in Hebrew, they don't use many vowels. You see, so it just depends on what the language is to come up with how it impacts your learning of other languages.
That's interesting. Let's talk about religion. I know you made mention of missionaries, and you found out that a lot of Lutheran people are in the Lofa area. But before that, what was the popular religion among the Loma people before and after
the Loma people didn't have any quote unquote established religion, except for things like ancestral worship and things like that. Definitions, you go to people who cut sand, and that was basically their way. But here's one thing that missionaries missed, not only of the Loma people, but most places in Africa, not just Liberia, and that is the Africans believe in a God. The African sense of a God or life is cyclical. You see, whereas the European religion way of life is linear. Linear, what does that mean? You live, you die, you go to hell, or you go to heaven. Done. That's it. The African believes that no, you die, you come back. You have to do well. If the ancestors intercede for us with God, we believe in God. In Loma, we say God alone. Or Zolama Galakaima. There is no Zo, there's no medicine man except God. So there has always been this belief in God. Why do they sacrifice the first fruit, as it is said in the Bible? Why did they do that? Why do they celebrate in a special way when a child is born? They believe in God. But the missionaries came, instead of building on that, for example, say, look, no, it is not the ancestor that intercede for you with to God. It is Jesus Christ. Or Muhammad, as the Arabs might say. They said, no, you are pagans. They were not pagans. They were strong believers in God, far more than the missionaries themselves. You see, so there was that way of believing in God that the Loma people carry. That when the Lutheran Church came to Liberia in 1860, it settled in Millenburg, and then later on went up to Bong and Lofa counties. It is just within the last maybe 20, 25 years that it has started spreading to various parts of the country. But that's where they went most of the time. So most of the people say from Turita to Belafenen to Zaza were Lutherans. We're brought up as Lutherans. I certainly went to a Lutheran school. I went to Zaza Lutheran School, and that's one of the best things that ever happened to me in my life in terms of my education. So it was wonderful to be in Zaza Lutheran Mission. I'm not going to tell you the year because you might then think about that was before Jesus was born. So yeah, so that's a religion I can think about. I mean, of course, now you have a lot of Loma people who have branched up to other churches, Catholics and Methodists and other churches. But initially, in the 50s and 60s, most Lomas, especially in the Zaza area, were Lutherans, and then the Episcopalians settled in Bolahon. So many of the people in the Bandis and the Lomas in that area were Episcopalians.
Okay, let's talk about the naming convention among the Loma people, especially with children. How do the boys and girls get their names? The baby boys.
The names?
Yeah.
Well, there are several ways, and I don't think this is unique to Loma people either. The conventional way is that the firstborn child of a woman, a girl, would get a certain name. The second-born child, then the firstborn boy. Only the Kisis in Liberia observe that strictly. Only the Kisis. For example, in Loma land, the firstborn of a lady is supposed to be called Sizi. then the second born is Piu, Onyankwe. You see, and then the third born is Piwi, of a boy. Of girls, the firstborn is supposed to be Kolu, and the secondborn is Mama. But we don't observe that strictly. So how are boys and girls named? They are either named according to ancestors, grandpas who died, or great grandfather who died several years ago, and they want to make sure that this person's memory is continued.
Yeah. That's
one way. Another way is Doma, which means namesake. And that's how I got my name. That if a child is born in Loma country, when the woman is in labor, she is put in a house where the traditional midwives attend to her. No man can enter the house at that time. There are exceptions, but very rare. So when the child is born, of course, the men are standing out there and wondering, hoping the delivery goes well. So when a child is born, the women scream in unison. Ba, ba is another way of saying hallelujah. And then they scream the gender of the child. It's a boy or it's a girl. And usually when the women scream like that, somebody will come forward and say, "Oh, that's my namesake." So, and if the parents accept that, there is an honor for the person who's proposing to do that. So that's another way many children get their names. When I was born, there was a gentleman in Woolsey who worked for the missionaries. His name was Sakui, and he said that he wanted me to be named after him. And, I liked the man so much. I was so glad I was named after him. He was just a wonderful, wonderful man.
All right, let's go back to there are questions that you answer. They are repeating. Moses Gabo say he wants to meet you one day or very soon. Moses Gabo say, this is very educative. I want to meet Professor Malakpa very soon. So I hope Moses can see you. Fire Harris is asking, where did the Loma people come from before settling in Lofa County? I know you addressed that from the beginning.
That's my uncle. If he goes by Fire Harris, that's my uncle right there. Tell my uncle that the people came from Misadu and they were headed by Fala, another uncle, and we originate from Kumba, the Kisiwoma from whom the Loma tribe started. That's why he's my uncle. Fire Harris is my uncle.
All right. Mother Mary, she's a praying mother, say in those days it was very difficult for us, meaning Loma girls, to marry someone from another ethnic group. True or false?
It is true. It is true. What happened was the people were parochial in a sense that you got up, you were raised in like a little town I'm from, Woolsey, and you met somebody there and you married somebody there. That was just it. It was very rare because people didn't travel as much. People travel very, very little. Very, very. I mean, it to go from Lofa to Monrovia was like, I remember even when I was a little child, when people went to Monrovia, they prepared for like 6 months for just to go to like Monrovia. And so there was not much trouble. There was not much interaction with other ethnic groups. There was also the fear that if you marry outside your ethnic group, your people will never see you. They will never see the children, and that kind of thing. Those kind of fears. It was not a matter of tribalism. It was more protectionism than anything else. Yeah. And like I said, there was also not much trouble. But as people travel more, of course, they began to interact more with other ethnic groups, and that's how nowadays, there are many people who travel around who are married to different ethnic groups. There's no any regard for any line of demarcation when it comes to marriage. And that's one thing I like about Liberia. I've traveled around Africa, especially West Africa. If the Liberian guy goes, to a club or to a program and sees the girl, he doesn't ask her first, what tribe are you? He says, what's your telephone number? They don't care what tribe you are. As long as they like you, that's it. That's the main thing. Ethnicity will come later, but we don't have much tribalism in Liberia, and I really admire that. I've been other places where you can't even marry somebody not only outside your ethnic group, you can't marry somebody outside your village.
You're right. All right, and there are props for the program. Mother Miris says she's 52 years old, and this is the very first time she's learning about her own ethnic group. So that's good for Focus on Liberia. We are here to educate, elevate, and promote all things Liberia. If you're just joining us, we are discussing the history and culture of the Loma ethnic group. Professor Malakpa, let's talk about Loma in politics. I know when the Liberia was not colonized, the coming of the settlers to have the country we now call Liberia, there were, some skirmishes between ethnic groups and the settlers. They were like the Gribble and Crew wars in the southeast. What was it like between the Lomans and the American Liberians or the settlers?
Well, let me say that the Lomas play a major role in establishing the boundary line between Guinea and Liberia. Okay. There were series of interactions between the settler groups and the boundary and the Guineans, not the Guineans, the French. There were treaties signed in 1892 and in 1907, 1911, but a line of demarcation didn't really come for the Lomas until up to 1926. But there's a major meeting held on March 4, 1914, where Vafli Colley, a Loma chief, played a major. He was very articulate to ensure that that part of what we now call Lofa County never went to Guinea. That's why he was honored by President Daniel Warner in 1916 and in 1917, and by CDB King in 1921. It was commissioned by those people. So they played a major role. The other role that the Lomas played was they were very active. There's a huge proportion of the Lomas within the Liberian Frontier Force.
Right. And I was going to talk about that. Why was that?
Well, I said earlier that you grew up, and if you want to get married, you
watch.
You wait until you can build your own house and stuff like that. And as a little boy, from my practical experience, say you and I grew up in Woolsey, and we're about the same age, we're 12, 13, 14, we played together and blah, blah, blah. And when you turn 18, you say, you know what? I'm going to Monrovia. I'm going to join the army. So they go and join the army. When they come back, and 2 years later, at about age 20 or 21, the first thing is, in those days, they allowed them to travel with their rifles. And they would get, I don't know where they get ammunition from, but they would come with a bunch of ammunition. So when they're entering the town, they stand at the edge of the town and fire. And they say, who is that? Everybody, who's coming? Who's coming to town? Who's coming to town? Who's coming to town? Oh, no, it's Jack Pablo. Oh, my God. He's a PFC. They're nothing but PFC, but the law had it that they had to carry his load from one town to the other because he was considered a government official.
Yeah.
So now he's got power. He's brought pride, and so you see that, or I see that, and I say, gee, this guy now is about the same age. And by the time he leaves, he's leaving with one of the most beautiful girls in town. And I have to stay here and be a porter to be carrying soldiers' loads? No, I'm going to Monrovia myself. That's how many started going to Monrovia. Some of us were even advised to join the army when we were growing up because They said that's the only way you can get quote unquote power. Well, so that's one thing that it was a source of employment, and that they saw this as the biggest source of employment. So lots of Loma people poured into the military, into the Liberian Frontier Force, as it was called in those days, and they play major roles. By the way, the government depended on them in squashing inter-ethnic groups like the Kru revolt, the Grebo revolt. The Lomas play a major. My uncle was one of those who went and he told me how much role they played, and the various groups when they revolted, it's mainly Loma soldiers, and I guess the highest Loma man that rose to become chief of staff was Ishkobe Johnson. Well, Brigadier Kesley, Brian Kesley was also considered Loma, even though he had a Mandingo background. So you have these people who are rising and contributing enormously to the Liberian Frontier Force. It's only now you see it, the force, the LNG, AFL, very much mixed. But there was a time where it was predominantly Loma.
Right. Because when I was growing up, the name or somewhere in the army and the name Yakpawuro became synonymous. Yes.
And that's why you have the name Noko. It's called the social Noko. Noko in Loma is brother-in-law. So they will come to you, they don't know your name, they call you Noko. Noko, you will go, you not go. Come on, give me English. The government give me gun. The government did not give me English. He said, man, move from here, you Noko, you can't speak English. The government give me gun, come on, not give me English. He said, the government give me gun, the government did not give me English. You will go, you not go.
You go.
You go. You will go. You will go.
So generally, what I know you touch on that, but if you can conclude on what are Loma people known for in Liberia?
Well, I'm not sure if Loma people are known for any particular thing. One of the things that I think that Loma people are known for is that they love schooling. They are among some of the best brains in the country. For years and years and years, some of the highest numbers of graduates from the university and from Continental College were not only Loma people, but people from Lofa County. And so you have one thing that they say Loma people love. They love schooling. When I was a little boy, I even when I was sick, I like to go to school. So schooling is one of them. And unfortunately, this is changing, but they're also very law abiding. They are not people who are people who like to revolt, who like to fight. They're very law abiding, and that's why even the local laws, the local governance machineries were working, because the people are very, very law abiding. I, as a little boy growing up in Woolsey, I don't even remember where I saw two men fight, because there was such strong restrictions on if you fight, even if they had a very heated quarrel that they were almost getting into a fight, that meant heavy fines. So very law abiding. So, those are things I can say, but I cannot pinpoint one thing and say, this is what the Loma people are known for, except that they are known for tabogi. They love their tabogi.
Right. Let's talk about food then. But
yes. Yeah, they love their tabogi. But here's the thing. The Loma people are famous for tabogi. When I was growing up, quote-unquote civilized Loma people couldn't admit in public that they could eat tabogi, because it almost seems to be a shame that I can't eat tabogi, because now I'm an educated man. I cannot admit that I eat tabogi. Right. Well, now tabogi is a national dish. Yeah. And the other thing they used to mock Loma people for is they were dog eaters. Now everybody eats issue.
But those are. Is that a stereotype, or what? Or is it true?
Yeah, that's a stereotype. There are Loma people like my family. that taboo. I mean, a dog is a very, very strict taboo. Very, very strict.
Okay.
Yes. So those are things that people say out of either it's a stereotype or something like that. But Loma people love their tapagi. And the other interesting thing is not only Loma people who eat tapagi. The Bellas love tapagi. The Bandis love tapagi. The Pellas love tapagi. I mean, these are traditional dishes of those three ethnic groups.
Yeah.
But the Lomas are more famous for it than any other group.
And there are some stereotypes of Loma people. Give some examples where they come from.
Well, I'm not sure if I know of a stereotype as to where the Loma people come from.
I mean the stereotype.
The stereotypes.
Where those stereotypes come from? Some of those stereotypes, so we can discuss them. Focus on Liberia.
I think one of the reasons is that when the Lomas used to come to Monrovia, they had a very difficult time with the English language. So they would be conceived as just very illiterate, very dumb people who didn't know anything but eat tabagi and eat dogs. So when you saw Loma people getting educated, it shocked people. Loma, man, when I gave the national oration in 2008, many people told me, they said they didn't believe that was a Loma man speaking. They told me that's a Loma man talking. No, it cannot be. Loma man can't speak English like that because of a stereotype.
Yeah. That's a stereotype because you have defied that, and so it's very clear that that's a stereotype.
Yeah, it's a stereotype. So it's not that like I say, it takes practice. I gave an example earlier because of the nature of our language. Speaking Pele would be nothing because Pele is very close to Loma. Speaking Bandi would be nothing because Bandi is very close. Speaking Mende would be nothing because Mende is close to Loma. But if you tell the person to speak French or English, then a lot of things are defied. So it makes it difficult to say that, to speak those languages. So it would take incredible amount of practice to ensure that the person speaks those languages fluently.
Any physical characteristics of Loma people that you know of?
No, not that I know of. Not that I know of. They are not usually very tall people, although. Again, I don't want to generalize that, but it's difficult to see a Loma man, 7 feet or taller. It's very rare. 6'3", 6'5", maybe, yeah. But more than that, it's not like the Dinka of Sudan. They can get really, really tall now.
Okay. Yeah, sometimes they have a stereotype about Loma women, about their physical qualities.
Oh, yeah. They call that the Buzo sign. That's another stereotype.
Yeah, could be stereotype too. All right. Yeah. Let's talk about, we are almost about to close. Let's talk about literature in the Loma ethnic group. Some of the folklore, some of the proverbs, the parables, the legends, the stories.
There's so many of those, and most of them are actually in print, thanks to the Loma Literacy Center that was established in my hometown in Wolsey. Unfortunately, during the wars, the Loma Literacy Center was looted, and the typewriters, the mimeography machines, the books, some of the books were taken out and literally just destroyed. So that's one of my ambitions, really, to rebuild that Loma Literacy Center, because it will bring back the education that Loma children need. There are many, many parables, many folk tales, folklores, allegories in Loma that would be very useful if children growing up would read some of these, like I did. It really helped me. And when I was in 7th grade, I was writing articles for publication in Loma because of the advantage that I had. I don't think it was because I was smarter than the other children. It was because I had the advantage of growing up in Wolsey, where these booklets were printed. And I started reading, I started working in the Loma Literacy Center when I was in 6th grade.
Wow.
Yes.
That's,
So I had that advantage. It really, really, that's why to this day, I still write short stories. I have, right now on my computer, I have over 60 short stories that I write. It's just a pleasure of mine. I sit down and write short stories. Um, and most of these are derived from the stories we heard around the fire. In fact, that's the title of my collection, Around
okay.
the Fire, because that's where I heard these stories.
Yeah.
You see, so the Loma that's another thing about languages. Languages have their literature, and some of that literature may not necessarily be in print. It may be oral literature,
Oral
but it's
literature.
literature nonetheless.
Exactly.
And the Loma people like to pass on these things from generation to generation, and they are not unique in that regard. Most ethnic groups do. You
Yeah.
see, and so you have um, stories, folklore, allegories, and parables. Loma people are full of parables. I don't think they are unique in that regard. But my wife is Crew, and every now and then I throw a Loma parable at her, and what does that mean again? You know, she says, and I explain to her what it is. Sometimes it's very funny, sometimes it's not so funny, but it's very didactic. It's very instructional.
Yeah.
Um, so we learn another avenue of learning that you just can't stop learning. You hear new parable all the time, and from those parables you learn the facts of life. That's why I'm saying don't limit the definition of education to numeracy and illiteracy. I mean literacy.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just I think a few days ago, my Facebook post was education or being educated is acquiring the skills and knowledge to solve a problem. So as long as you can
Exactly.
get that and solve
Yes.
problems, good. Let's talk about the games. Some of the games the Loma boys play and the girls play in the villages.
Well, before the advent of football and volleyball and basketball, um, for me growing up, we had football, but we didn't have basketball.
Yeah.
Um, we do a lot of hide and seek. There are distinct differences between the games the boys play and the games the girls play. At least when I was growing up, most of those games were played on the moonlight. The girls' games were always very nice and orderly. They would stand in a circle and clap their hands and sing and run and throw the color throw it to the other person. So you run, the one girl will run across the circle and clap her hand in the face of the other girl. That means she's next. She has to go clap her hands in the face of very nice songs, very, very beautiful songs. And guess what? We were always there to just ruin it for them.
And you didn't play with the
That's how,
girls in that game?
yeah, that's how nice we were. You know, we didn't succeed all the time, but we tried.
Yeah,
What
no.
did we do as boys? Well, we run across town. We hide and seek. We had wrestling matches where we draw a circle and two boys go into that circle and wrestle who's going to throw the other one out or throw the other one down. And as you're doing that, people from your section of town are standing there and cheering you on. That means literally means inside our quarter empties. In other words, don't make us shame. Don't make us shame. You got to fight. You got to do it. So we played those kinds of things. Some of us grew up in towns that were surrounded by rivers, so we learned to swim. We learned to climb trees, lots of trees, coconut trees and plum trees and cola nut trees. We learned to do those. We learned fishing. Fishing was not just because you want to catch fish. It was a sport. It was a sporting event. So you could spend the whole day on the river and come back with two small fishes to your mother. So it was not so much just catching fish. It was another educational thing was that we learned from our older brothers and our fathers to set traps in the bush, just like the girls learned to fish in the rivers where their mothers and older sisters taught them. So there were various kinds of sporting events. Some of them competitive, some not so competitive. But the truth of the matter is, we were out there. Nowadays, the sporting events are Western. They are football, basketball, volleyball. I was very shocked when I went to Liberia recently. I just didn't find that out. The young boys and girls in Liberia know more about European football than they know about Liberian football.
Yeah, that's true. Let's slip in a few comments from Facebook as we are winding down. Josh, first, let's see. Yangwe Guluman says the Loma tribe invented its own sandals.
Yeah, we had different footwears. We had we had our own footwear. That is true. But we also even, and I'm not sure if this is one of the Loma ethnic group, we came out with our own mechanisms for working on the farm. For example, if you go to work on the farm, we learn to take a tree bark and make a shoe out of it so that the thorns don't juke you. And then we made gloves out of animal skin. So if you're brushing the bush, as we call it in Loma, the thorns don't juke you either. So we had different mechanisms for protecting ourselves. We learned different ways of fishing, different ways of hunting, different ways of trap making. And we, like other ethnic groups, we had some of the best blacksmiths in the nation. That they made different knives, cutlasses, machetes, hoes for women, axes to cut trees down. And that's exactly what I was saying about when it comes to education. If you have people who can do those things for themselves, they are educated.
What about those and the traditional healers?
The traditional healers play a vital role because before I'll be a teenager, the traditional healers were the only people who provided any kind of a cure. My father was a herbalist and a zoo, and I saw many people come to my house. Our house was never quiet. It was always full of people coming in for different kind of cure. And incidentally, my father, I was born at a time where the Zaza hospital was already established with missionary doctors and stuff like that. But there were cases that were taken to the hospital that they couldn't cure. They bring them to my father, he killed them. Mm-hmm. So the herbalists have always played a huge role. Now, in any community like that, you have genuine people and you have false guys. People who are just lying to people that they can do this and they can do that.
Someone is asking about your village, Pastor Wolf. He said, okay. We say, why was he expelled? And that question is coming from Wozi, and that is coming from George Talawoda. Why was Pastor Wolf expelled from Wozi?
He was not expelled. He was not expelled. I just saw Pastor Wolf last February. He and myself met in Tacoma, Washington, for the memorial service of the late Jerry Kearns, the people in Sakui. He went to Wozi like many other missionaries to learn Loma. Like I said, that's where the Loma Literacy Center was. And when he finished learning Loma in Wozi, he was reassigned to Zaza. From Zaza, he was reassigned to St. Peter Lutheran Church on 14th Street first the Feasible and then to St. Peter Lutheran Church in Monrovia before he finally left the country in 1974.
Okay, so that's for you. All right, Professor Dr. Malakpa, it's been a pleasure. Do you have any final comments or final thoughts regarding the history and culture of the Loma ethnic group before we close?
It's been a pleasure. I thank you so much for inviting me to this program. I have only one comment, and that is the extreme regret the pain and regret I see when you see the Loma culture as rich as it is, and this is not only true of the Loma culture, but most of the cultures in Liberia and parts of Africa, as rich as they are, they begin to slip away. They begin to be eroded.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why I would love to start the Loma Literature Center, to document some of these things so that upcoming generations can see them. For example, respect for elders it's a major part of Loma culture, as it is with other cultures.
Exactly.
But it's been eroded because some of these children think that because some of the older folks cannot read and write, they are stupid. They couldn't be more wrong. You know, listening to parents is no longer adhered to by so people are growing up in Liberia who cannot speak Loma. They are born right there, not only in Monrovia but in the interior. You speak Loma to say, I can't hear that one. It's so painful. It's so painful. So there's a need to strengthen the cultural, the invaluable characteristics of our cultures, not only in Loma country, but in every ethnic group in Liberia and indeed throughout Africa. Because if you don't respect your own culture, you do not maintain your own culture. I'm not saying the culture should be stagnant.
Right.
Every culture is dynamic. Every culture is influenced by other cultures. But there are some invaluable characteristics of culture that should not be eroded.
Precisely.
And unfortunately, that's happening. For example, the language itself must be maintained. But thank you for this opportunity, and it's a pleasure to have been here. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk about my people. I love my people. I'm proud of my people. And I couldn't be more. In my autobiography, I'm saying that I thank God that I was born and raised in Woolsey because I learned a lot from Woolsey.
And thank you so much. And as we tell people, this is just the beginning. What we do on Focus on Liberia, we are doing the history and culture of all the ethnic groups. This is just to get the discussion started so that more people will take interest in this and learn about our own culture, because it is us, Liberians, who will write our own history. We will have to promote our own culture. The richness in our culture must be passed on to the next generation. And that task is dependent on us. I want to thank you so much, Professor Malakpa, for availing yourself. I want to thank our listeners and our viewers on Facebook, on YouTube, and also across the globe. We want to thank you so much for joining us. I want to thank all of us here from Focus on Liberia. We are grateful. It's because of you that we are still carrying on this program. We depend on your continual support to keep bringing you all these stories. Until next time, from me and my crew, we say thank you so much for joining. Good night and God bless.